futuristico. Rap futuristico. Rap futuristico.
Well, everybody, I've got a special guest for you all. We have Scott Fleming, a football journalist for the Sunday Mail. He also writes for Soccer Italia and obviously footballitalia.net, amongst others. Scott, welcome to this magnificent special little podcast.
Thank you for having me, it's a pleasure.
It's always good to have a fellow Scot to talk about Italian football with, so you're definitely most welcome. So everybody will know that we're going to talk about Italy and get your thoughts on the Italian national team and everything like that. So first, I just want to ask what you think about the squad Prandelli selected, and if you think it's a good one, a bad one, things like that.
Yeah, I was pretty much satisfied with the squad that he arrived upon. I think it's not the squad we would envisaged him picking when he first took over, or even the squad we would have envisaged him selecting maybe even 3 or 4 months ago. But I think a lot of it's been taken out of his hands. Obviously, the Giuseppe Rossi's injury, other players like Pazzini, who would ordinarily have been in there, but hasn't really been getting into the inter team. I don't think you could have justified selecting him. So I like the final 32. I thought it was good to see people like Verratti getting a chance, even if it is just a chance to train for a couple of weeks with the senior squad. I liked Sciolotto being in there because he's that very rare thing in Italy. He's a genuine wide player. But when it came down to the final 23, I think it was fair enough, really, that those players and the others didn't go. Borini was definitely a bit of a surprise and maybe a bit of a risk, but when you're talking about an international tournament where all the coaches spend so much time scrutinising their opponents' tactics and lineups, it's really invaluable to have someone that's something sort of an unknown quantity, and Borini, I think, could maybe fill that role for Italy. He's young, he's lesser known. I wouldn't expect him to start any games, but he could maybe be an impact sub off the bench. And he's one of those players that always get glowing reports from the coaches he's worked with for his attitude and his work rate. So yeah, I was fairly satisfied with it on the whole. I think in the circumstances it was the best squad available to him.
What are your thoughts, Scott, on the reports that have kind of surfaced this week about Prandelli thinking about changing his formation? Because obviously you'll have watched the friendly against Russia in despair at the level of defending, which was non-existent, and then the reports this week that he's been toying with a 3-5-2 and playing Daniele De Rossi as a centre back. And what do you think about that change?
Well, it is possibly a bit dangerous to switch, having never played that system throughout his whole time in charge of Italy, and to do it so near before a tournament. But you can understand the reasoning, really, when the defending was so poor in Zurich against Russia, and also other areas of the team weren't functioning that well either. I don't think Italy have ever looked really exceptional in this 4-3-1-2. I think it's just a system that Prandelli had to adopt because there's so little talent available to him in the wide areas, and there's not really an uber talented trequartista either. I think, as I say, it's maybe a bit of a risk adopting it just a couple of days before the first game in the tournament, but you've obviously got the Juventus contingent who've had a bit of success with that system in Serie A. You've got plenty of other players like Giovinco, Diamante, Maggio who are used to playing in that system with their clubs. And I think the good thing about it, 3-5-2, is it's a kind of all-purpose system. With other systems, you need to sacrifice something. With a 4-3-1-2, you need to sacrifice width. With a 4-3-2-1, you need to sacrifice a striker. With a 3-5-2, you've got width, you've got 2 strikers. You're kind of ticking all the boxes. The only thing is you're possibly a wee bit vulnerable at the back unless you've got 3 players who are accustomed to playing in that system. And obviously it would have been good to have the Juventus trio, Barzagli, Bonucci, Chiellini. That looks unlikely with Barzali's injury, but I think De Rossi could do a job there. He certainly was playing in more or less that situation for a lot of the season with Roma.
So how far do you think Italy will go then? Obviously I'm not confident. A lot of the guys that I've spoken to aren't very confident either. I mean, do you think they can make it out of the group, which I've got some serious doubts about?
It's weird. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make it out of the group. Just looking at the record against Croatia, the record against Ireland since Trapattoni took over, and fact that Spain are, in many people's eyes, best team in the world, one of the best teams of all time. That said, I think if they can get out of the group, I could see them going as far as the semi-final, because I think they'd definitely be a match for England or France in the quarter-finals. I mean, it'd be difficult to see them getting past Germany in the semis, who would obviously be their likely opponents. But I don't know, maybe I'm very, very naive, but I am optimistic, despite the kind of ongoing scandal, despite the injury problems, the different opinions about what formation should be taken and so on. I am optimistic. I think during maybe the friendly results haven't been too impressive, but I think in competitive games under Prandelli, Italy have did well. I think they do have a lot of options, and I think the attitude in the squad is pretty good as well since he took over. So I'm optimistic. I think a lot depends on that first game against Spain. If he can adapt to that new system well, dig in, maybe get a draw, maybe even a win like they did against Spain in the friendly in Bari last year, then that would really set them up to go on and have a good campaign.
And obviously, Scott, you mentioned Borini as maybe a man who can have an influence on Italy's campaign. Who would you say would be the key man, though, for Cesare Prandelli's team?
I would say probably Cassano. I think Cassano's one of those guys that when he's on his game, he can make those around him look a lot better than they are. I think he's one of those that's always had great working relationships with his strike partner throughout his career. I think watching him and Totti in the Roma days was a real pleasure. He had a good relationship with Panzini at Sampdoria. More recently was Latan at Milan. They've produced some pretty exquisite stuff at times. So he's one of those guys, if he's on form, then I think he could bring the best out of Balotelli, or whoever his partner happens to be. And he's also the way he kind of flips around the front line, and he's got such great vision and range of passing. I think he could create a lot for the on-rushing midfielders, whether it happens to be Montalivo or Marquisio or whoever. So I would say certainly in attacking sense, a lot depends on him, because he is obviously arguably the most naturally gifted Italian of his generation.
And finally, who are your tip for glory in Euro 2012?
I have to say Scotland.
We can only hope, Scott. We can only hope.
You never know. Actually, will get ejected because of this match. Thing, and Bonnie Scotland, Caledonia will ride to the rescue and do a Denmark. But yeah, as bland as it sounds, I would probably have to say Germany. Spain, I look at Spain and I think they're stupendously, ridiculously good in midfield, but up front they've got only three strikers who aren't in great form. Torres, Negredo, Llorente. They're also a bit frail at the back with Puyol injured and Piqué not in the best of form. So probably Germany. Germany've got strong side, but particularly in midfield, the fact that they can afford to leave the likes of Royce, Schürrle, and Götze, probably three of the most gifted young attacking midfielders in the world, on the bench, pretty much says it all. But I'm maybe being ridiculously naive, but I have got a feeling about this Italy side that, as I say, semi-finals is most probably the very best they can do, but I wouldn't rule it out altogether. I did put a fiver on them winning.
Excellent stuff. Well, I hope you get some money back. that would make it all worth it.
A ridiculous amount of bets, so I think I'm pretty sure to get some money back, even if it's just.
So you're not confident in Italy. So you're not too confident in Italy. You're just in case.
Yeah, I think the thing we always have to bear in mind is they're better, so much better than they were under Marcello Lippi. They're not just a team that kind of sits there and waits to see what the other team does. They come out and they're proactive, and they try and play relatively attractive football, giving younger players a chance. I mean, I have liked what Prandelli did so far, and I'd like to think that the squad will go on and improve almost regardless of what happens in Poland and Ukraine. But as I say, I'm relatively optimistic that they will at least get out of the group.
Excellent stuff. Well, Scott, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on.